Namaste and welcome to another episode of the Dharma podcast. In today's episode, we will narrate a little known story of how the contemporary Rishi and an original intellectual Kshatriya, the late great Sri Sita Ram Goel, how he thrashed Romila Thapar in a letter dated 1991 in which he exposed her industrial scale lies and distortions of Indian history. But before we begin, we need to set a brief context to this letter. You see, the first character trait of Marxists and left liberals like Romila Thapar is a fact that they are cheap bullies and how they miraculously transform themselves into victims the moment someone confronts them with truth and facts. A defining character trait of a bully is a complete absence of manners and even basic human decency. Bullying, intimidation, groupism, corruption, and wolfish tactics are some of the main elements in the playbook of our Marxist pamphleteers who masquerade as historians. This gang of Marxists, it either expelled or finished off the careers of all genuine scholars and historians who did not toe their line. Yet, there were several undaunted men and women who were not only not afraid of the Marxist bullying, but they actually confronted them and punched them back twice as hard. Sure, it took a long time for the results of their courage to show up in public, but as the timeless proverb says, in the end, Satyameva Jayate, or truth alone triumphs. And the proof of this fact that is available everywhere. Over the last 15 or 20 years, names like Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, Bipan Chandra, Satish Chandra, R.S. Sharma, and D.N. Jha, all these names have deservedly become obscenities and swear words. Let me ask you a simple question. Would you like to be called Romila Thapar? Would you like to be called Irfan Habib? This is the extent to which the credibility of all these Marxist hooligans have been reduced to in their own lifetime. And among all such great fighters against these Marxist hooligans, Sri Sita Ram Goel is the undisputed master boxer. His methods of dealing with these Marxist bullies is a great model for all of us to follow if we want to recover and write and rewrite and propagate the real history of Bharatavarsha. So, here are 5 lessons that Sri Sita Ram Goel's life, work and his legacy have taught us. Lesson number 1. Do not suffer the Marxists. Lesson number 2. Be independent and develop a solid scholarship. Lesson number 3. Confront the Marxists head on. Lesson number 4. When you confront them, watch them squirm and then watch them lose their ground when they start abusing and defaming you personally. Lesson number 5. And when they squirm and attack you personally, that is when they play the victim card, and that is also when you win. I can cite hundreds of instances of this model in Sri Sita Ram Goel's writings, but one letter that he wrote to Romila Thapar in 1991 is a superb example of this model. In that letter, Sita Ram Goel rebuffs and rebuts Romila Thapar and her gang's fake claims that Muslim invaders and rulers did not destroy Hindu temples or that they did not forcibly convert Hindus. By itself, the letter is an exemplary work of solid historical scholarship, fidelity to truth, and fearlessness in facing a deadly opponent who has formidable political and institutional power. Here are some excerpts from that letter. Quote, this is what Sita Ram ji says at the beginning of his letter. We return to the Marxist professors. We have cited from 80 histories written by Muslims over a period of more than 1000 years. We have also cited several Islamic inscriptions which confirm what the historians say. The citations show how Hindu temples continue to be destroyed over a vast area and for a long time. We have added no editorial comments and have given no communal twists to the events that took place. All along, we have kept to the actual language used by the Muslim historians themselves. We wonder if the professors will dismiss as a mere listing of dates the evidence we have presented. What we expect from the Marxist professors is that they will come forward with a historical analysis and interpretations so that the destruction of Hindu temples mentioned in the Muslim narratives gets explained in terms of economic or political or any other non-religious motives. We stick to our position, namely that it is the theology of Islam which offers the only straightforward and satisfactory explanation of why Muslim conquerors and rulers did what they did to Hindu places of worship. We have provided full facts about that theology as also about the history of how it took the final shape. It would be most welcome if the professors come out with their comments on the character and meaning of this Islamic theology. In fact, we look forward to a Marxist explanation of it. What were the concrete material conditions and objective historical forces which gave rise to this theology in Arabia? We refer to the second point which the professors had made in their letter to the Times of India sometime in August 1986. They have said in the letter that acts of intolerance have been committed by the followers of all religions. We do not share their philosophy of separating the Buddhists, the Jains and the animists from the Hindus, but we agree to use their terms for the time being and request them to produce, number one, a list of epigraphs which record the destruction of Buddhist and Jain monuments by any Hindu at any time. 2. Citations from Hindu literary sources describing the destruction of Buddhist and Jain monuments and animist shrines by any Hindu at any time. Point number 3. The Hindu theology which says or even suggests that non-Hindu places of worship should be destroyed or desecrated or plundered, or which hails all such acts as pious or meritorious. Point number 4. A list of Hindu kings or commanders whom Hindus have hailed as heroes for desecrating or destroying or converting into Hindu places of worship any Buddhist or Jain or animist shrines. Point number 5. A list of Buddhist and Jain monuments which have been desecrated or destroyed or converted into Hindu places of worship in the remote or the recent past. Point number 6. The names and places of Hindu monuments which stand on the sites occupied earlier by Buddhist or Jain monuments or animist shrines, or which have materials from the latter embedded in their masonry. Point number 7. Names of Buddhist, Jain and animist leaders or organizations who have claimed that such and such Hindu monuments are usurpations and demanded their restoration to the original occupants. Point number 8. Names of Hindu leaders and organizations who have resisted any demand made by Buddhists or Jains or animists for the restoration of the latter's places of worship, or called for legislation which will maintain the status quo, or cried Hinduism is in danger, or staged street riots in support of their usurpations. We think that this sort of concrete evidence alone can decide the question of the limits to the logic of restoration of religious sites. If the Marxist professors fail to come out with answers to questions posed by us and to present the evidence in support of their statements, we shall be forced to conclude that far from being serious academicians, they are cynical politicians hawking ad hoc or implausible explanations in the service of a specific party line. In fact, we shall be justified in saying that they are Stalinists. In fact, Stalinism is an exercise in suppressio veri, suggestio falsi in pursuit of a particular ideology. Close quote. This is an extraordinary model of a step-by-step demolition of all these Marxist pamphleteers who have reincarnated today as wokes or left liberal historians today. This does not end here. The second part of this story is even more interesting and rather eye-opening. After the first edition of Sita Ram Goel's magnificent book, Hindu Temples, What Happened to Them? After the first edition of this book came out, he promptly sent a copy of the book to Romila Thapar, who was then a professor at the infamous Jawaharlal Nehru University, and she was busy poisoning the minds of young students out there. Along with the book, Shri Sita Ram Goel also sent her a covering letter which was dated 27 June 1991. That letter is, it has a kind of a timeless value. The letter is a textual equivalent of a stinging slap. Let me read out just a few points from that letter, and I quote, "I have posed a questionnaire for the School of Historians which you lead," meaning which Romila Thapar leads. "You may also read the pages from 70 to 103, which also discusses the position of your school," meaning the alleged school of Marxist history. Point number 2. "I am drawing your attention to these pages so that your school does not plead ignorance of them while maintaining silence. Of course, you're free to ignore the questionnaire as coming from a person who has no standing in the academic world." And now comes, the golden words from Shri Sita Ram Goel. So he says that Romila Thapar is free to ignore Sita Ram Goelji's questionnaire and letter because he had no official position in the world of academia or university. And this is what he says after that. "I, however, feel that there are many people still left in this country who care for truth more than for position." This is pure gold. Surprisingly for Sita Ram Goel, Romila Thapar actually wrote back to him, and here is the gist of her reply. Quote, "As regards the issues raised in the questionnaire included in your book, you are perhaps unaware of the scholarly work on the subject discussed by a variety of historians of various schools of thought. May I suggest for a start, you might read my published lectures entitled Cultural Transaction and Early India." This is what Romila Thapar replies. And immediately, Shri Sita Ram Goel replied to her reply as follows, and this is really delicious. Quote, "I wish you had refrained from striking the pose of superiority which has been the hallmark of your school of historians. It does not go well with academic discipline. For information, I have been primarily a student of ancient India's history and culture and gone through a good deal of source material, literary as well as archaeological. One of the reasons I have wandered into India's medieval and modern history is that I want to know what really happened to Hindu heritage at the hands of latter-day liberators." Beautiful sarcasm. And he continues, "May I request you not to suggest any further reading of your stuff? You threatened to do so when you use the words 'for a start' while recommending your present pamphlet. I'm sorry to say that your pamphlet has added nothing to my knowledge or perspective. The method of selecting facts and floating fictions is very well known to me. Christian missionaries have done this far better than you. I have compiled historical and theological data about Islamic iconoclasm from whatever Islamic sources I could lay my hands on during the last 4 years. More may follow as I get at more of this source material. In an earlier volume, I have provided a list of around 2000 Muslim monuments which are known to stand on the sites of or have been built with the materials of Buddhist, Brahminical and Jain temples. The list is likely to get enlarged as I continue to look into more archaeological reports. My questionnaire is not at all a challenge issued in the spirit of a combat. We should be in a position to compare the record of Islamic iconoclasm with that of Hindu iconoclasm and draw fair conclusions regarding the character and role of the two religions. Close quote. Extraordinary, really. And finally, Sita Ram Goel also narrates what happened after Romila Thapar received the aforementioned reply which I just read out. And I quote his final summation. I have not received even an acknowledgement of this letter from Professor Thapar, leave alone any comments on the points raised by me. Her silence has left me sad, for I was looking forward to a fruitful dialogue. Close quote. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how it is done. I request all of you to, completely read through this letter, which is provided in the second volume of Hindu temples, what happened to them. It's provided at the end of the work. It's extraordinary. And if you are a Hindu or any truth-minded scholar who is serious about exposing these Marxist falsehoods and the methods and techniques of how to do it by developing a first-hand scholarship of primary materials and analytical and logical rigor, please do memorize this letter by Shri Sita Ram Goel. We should also not forget the fact that Shri Sita Ram Goel lived at a time when the Marxists had a near monopoly over history writing throughout India. Yet, Shri Goel showed exemplary guts and courage to constantly challenge them and expose their lies, their misdeeds, and their frauds. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, by doing so, Shri Goel also showed the way for posterity, for all of us to be fearless in tackling and attacking and exposing the Marxist historians on their own turf and win the battle right there. And on that inspiring note, we can conclude this episode of the Dharma podcast. I sincerely hope you found this episode useful and informative. As always, please click the like button to help the YouTube algorithm. Do subscribe to the Dharma Dispatch YouTube channel. Click the notification bell icon so that you don't miss any of our episodes. Do share our podcasts and also consider making a contribution of your choice to support our sacred work. Namaste. Vande Mataram.